Hey everybody, thanks for coming out today for Million Dollar Keynote. I will have the Q&A open, so you're welcome to ask questions anytime that you want to. And this work was originally called Speaker Launch because it was really about launching your business, but I've worked with so many people lately who wanted to learn more about keynotes, who wanted to also learn about the business side, but they were really interested in the speaking side. And so this is really a dual element of that. It's going to help you if you're into keynote development. It's going to help you if you're into business development for speaking. Now, when it comes to speaking, I'm not simply talking about being a professional speaker. A lot of people that I talk to are authors, they're coaches, they're information marketers. And one of the key components that I want you to realize is that speaking is only a delivery method. Just like a book is a delivery method, a CD is a delivery method, an MP3 is a delivery method. This webinar is a delivery method for a message. And a keynote or a presentation or a speech or a talk or conversation are all delivery methods. And the real goal for us as we launch speaking or we improve our speaking is to really have that $1 million attitude in two formats. First of all, we want to make sure that we're sharing $1 million content, stuff that really excites people, that makes them want to hear it over and over again, and that we make the audience feel like a million. I mean, there's nothing better than knowing that the content that you shared, the way that you shared it, has made people better off, and they come up to you afterwards and say, I just want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I want to thank you for the principles that you share today, or the ideas and concepts that you share today that I'm going to be able to take and apply and really make a difference in my life and the lives of other people. So that's really the core of this. When we look at $1 million keynote, whether it's your speech or whether it's a complete business model, that $1 million concept is in your mind, that you're going to bring the best of the best that you have to offer, and your audience is going to get the best from you, and they're going to go away feeling great as well. So here are the promises today. We're going to look at the old school speaking model, the model change, the shift, the gift, and the lift, how to really engage people. And that's really the core of $1 million keynote. At age 12, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, and I hope that you don't mind, I'm not going to spend the next 20 minutes with background. Hopefully that's okay. I gave my first speech at age 12. I was paid to speak by the time I was 16. At age 24, my first wife passed away in my arms, and that became my core content for speaking. I still speak to this day. A majority of my speaking is done to life insurance companies because I am a beneficiary of life insurance. In fact, Sam, who is my oldest son, who was 5 weeks old when Sherry passed away, he is a senior in college, just began a senior year, and that life insurance policy is what's paid his tuition. Wow. So I love speaking to that industry. I've given over 2,500 speeches, presentations, etc. I've helped 35,000 people become public speakers or further their speaking. I don't consider myself a professional speaker. I consider myself more of a conversational speaker. If we were sitting down at Denny's or Waffle House or Morton's, it wouldn't matter. My conversation, my style, my cadence, my rhythm, my excitement, all of that is just about going to be identical. If I'm on stage, it might be a little bit louder, but other than that, it's going to be almost the same. And I think that that's really important as we communicate. I'm a $10,000 keynote non-celebrity speaker, meaning that I don't have this background or this track record of fame that has me in this arena. So my keynote's 10,000. And I'm not a celebrity. So if you're not a celebrity and you're thinking, I don't even know if I can make any money keynote speaking, I'm not sure I can get anybody to give me $100. Absolutely you can. And so some of the things that we cover today are going to help you with that as well. Now then, what you need to do is make sure you get out a pen, paper, something physical. Everything that I cover will not be on the screens. I may forget some of the stuff I say. So when you go, hey, Paul, what was that you mentioned before? I may not be able to hit that again. So make sure that you're taking notes. I am from the South, even though somehow I've managed to completely get rid of my accent. And it sounds like I'm just a normal talking human being. So hopefully you'll be able to understand everything that I say today and will not need an interpreter. But we're going to move quickly. We're going to cover a lot of material. I did a survey not long ago, and the survey said that when it came to speaking, they wanted to have an impact and they wanted to make an income, all of which we'll really focus heavily on today. We're going to look at that traditional speaking model and how it's moved away from what it used to be, how we can leverage today's technology and today's really blessings that we have. We live in a great time to become a speaker, and we're going to really focus on having impact and creating an income from that. Impact really means our responsibility. It's our responsibility to bring the best of us. It's our responsibility to deliver the best to the audience. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're giving them the things that they need to go in the direction that they want to go and to achieve the result that they want to achieve. And then whatever that result is what we make an income on. Not long ago, I was speaking to a group in the medical field. And when I got there, they said, listen, all we want is to laugh. We've been here for 3 days at this conference, and it's been about law, and it's been about new regulations, and we're burnt out and we're worn out. And can you just get up there and make us laugh? Can we just be entertained and not have to think? All right. So that was the result that the meeting planner wanted. What did I do? I delivered that because that's what my income was coming from, right? Was that result. Find out what that meeting planner wants or what the end result is for that audience, and we get paid for that. That's the real essence of it. Often people want to say things like, well, I want to go in and give motivational talks, or I want to go in and do X, Y, and Z talk. It's okay to have something as far as a topic and a theme, but to really get paid, what we've got to do is go in and deliver the result that they want. If we're going to deliver our result our way, then we host our own events, we host our own webinars, we host our own seminars, and I'm for that. I'm not against that at all. But if we're going to go out and get a gig, then we're going to make sure that we're bringing the result that they want and that they desire. The challenge in doing this is that often we don't have a clear system to follow. We don't know how to put together our talks and structure them in a way that's really $1 million level. We don't know how to follow up after the speech. We don't know how to get booked. All of these elements that can be such a challenge for us when we're building a business around speaking and around communicating, because speaking is still one of the greatest leverage sources of all time. You know, if we've got a popular podcast or popular webinar, or we're able to go in and speak to 100 people or 200 or 1,000 or 2,000, we have this audience that we're able to now navigate through life with, that we're now able to create income from, that we're now able to share impact with, and we're able to create this legacy. And even while we're still alive, you guys have heard me talk about before, being a legend, that we're making an impact and difference in the here and now. And then often another challenge is that people want to get booked solid. You know, I have a hard time getting gigs, and even if I do, then they won't pay me. Paul, what do I do? How in the world do I actually get paid to talk? Now, everything that we share today is going to be pretty fast paced. I'm not going to sell you anything at the end. This isn't rolling into a program. I'm going to give you some options that you can take the next step if you want to. It's totally up to you, but there won't be any way to check out on anything today. So you can lower your guard if that's all right. Two things already that may seem out of the norm. I didn't spend 20 minutes talking about my background, and I'm not going to sell you anything. So let's talk about the shift in speaking. All of these, I think, are super positive, but everybody's not thrilled about them. First of all, being a speaker. Back in the old days, to be a speaker meant that you stood on stage, you were behind a podium, and you lectured. And that was basically it. That was the format. Even when I first started speaking, for the most part, that was the format. Today, everybody's a speaker. Everybody can grab their megaphone. Everybody can get out there and talk. Everybody can have a website. Anybody can have a podcast. Anybody can host a webinar. Anybody can actually go to a hotel, rent a room, and hold their own event. Being a speaker today is so much different and really so much better than it was years ago. Secondly, meetings. About 20 years ago, 15 years ago, meetings were full. Every organization was having meetings, and they were spending thousands upon thousands of dollars just for speakers. But then once the economy kind of took a little bit of a hit, took a little bit of a beating, once shareholders started getting a little bit upset about how much was being spent at meetings, it was a huge shift. And meetings started to become more and more empty. And you don't find the venues that you used to find. And there's not as many meetings as there used to be. And even if there are, it's very difficult to fill the room. But The positive thing is, in today's day and age, you can host your own meeting. So I'm hosting my own meeting right now. I filled the seats myself. I was in control of the date on this calendar. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. And then getting booked. There's something about that desire as a speaker to have somebody representing you and booking you and getting out there and doing all the effort, and your calendar magically gets filled. Again, this is a pretty big shift. Back in the day, it was a little bit easier to get signed with a true agency that went out and did all the promotion, all the legwork for you. Today, it's still available, but for the most part, agencies act a little bit more like a publishing company, in that you come in with your proven work, you prove that you have an audience, you prove that you have the credibility, you prove that you have the content or the message, and then you send us your leads and we'll help you close the lead and we'll negotiate the deal, which is still super helpful. But as far as my speaking agent goes, if I will send her leads, she'll close those leads, but she's not out there finding the gigs for me. She's not out there working the referrals for me. I have to do that, and she negotiates and closes the deal. Today, we've got a lot of things like self-booking. You've got something like Speaker Match, where people come on and actually search for a speaker and get booked through a website. I personally have found this to not be super successful. In fact, a lot of speakers that I talk to have said that, it's really hard to get booked at a site like this because there's just so many speakers. There have been a handful that said they've gotten good results from it, but a majority says that they don't. And so what I want to show you today is a way for you to really control your bookings, control your calendar, to get paid, and to actually have an audience that comes to you time and time again instead of you always having to search for it. So here's really the gift, the move that's taken place that gives us an advantage today. Number one is your clients. And your clients, it's your audience. The old school way of doing things was that you went to the audience, right? You showed up at a venue. You stood on a stage. Now, we still do that, and that's always going to be there, but there's been a shift. Now the audience can come to you. You guys came to me today. I'm honored that you came to me, but you came to me. You clicked on a link, you signed up, and now you showed up, right? So our audience has shifted. The old model is really like, and we're kind of in love with this, a little bit enamored. It's kind of like Aerosmith. They go out on tour to all these different venues. People buy tickets and they show up, right? On the opposite side, there's a group like Alabama, who built a theater in, I think, Myrtle Beach, and everybody goes to them. They don't wait for Alabama to come to their town. They go to Alabama's town. In today's world, if you will build your own theater, if you'll build your own stadium, your own arena, then you never have to worry about your calendar. You never have to worry about the seats being filled or not. You don't have to search for gigs. You have people searching for you. And so it's a radical upside down shift that's a gift. Secondly is content. We live in a day and age where it's easier than ever to put together great content. And there's no excuse for not having incredible content as you speak and as you share your message, because there's just too much information available. It's everywhere. Most of it is free. And so we've got all these different avenues to be able to collect that content and go forth and do incredible work and do great work. And number three is the calendar. It's easier to fill than ever because we're actually in charge of it. Now, let me give you a radical shift here that every time that I've mentioned this, people are kind of like, I hadn't thought of that. That sounds so weird to me. It sounds so different to me. And it's this, that every event that you hold gets to be on your calendar. I go to speakers pages all the time who, have got 2 events a year when you could actually fill your calendar up with your own events. Let's say that you got 2 events that you're speaking out there in public somewhere, and then you book yourself for 20 events. What if every other week you held a webinar? Every other week you held a teleseminar? And you might be thinking, well, I don't know if that counts as an event because nobody invited me to do it. Really? What's Alabama do when they have the Alabama Theater in Myrtle Beach? Nobody invited them to do that. They decided to do it. What did they do? They set dates. People go and buy tickets and show up. Does Alabama say, you know what? We're not even going to put these dates on our calendar because we're not out on tour. Since we're not out on tour, this doesn't even count. No way they don't say that. They're booked. They put the dates on the calendar and then they expect to fill those seats, right? So we live in the day and age now where as a speaker, as a communicator, you get to fill your own calendar up. And there's nothing wrong at all with publishing those dates and inviting people to come and attend. That's exactly what you want them to do. Now, that can be a mixture of venues. It can be the venue where you're invited to speak. It can be in a venue that you rented and you're holding your own seminar. It can be a venue that's online, just like we're doing right now. But it's still an event where you get to book your own calendar and fill up your own calendar. Now, think about it this way, that as I've got dates on my calendar, if something live comes up, then I'm able to shift it, right? If I've got a webinar that's planned for the 25th of this month, and I know that I'm going to Greenville to speak to an insurance company, I get to shift that. So when I was invited to do that keynote, I'm able to shift some of those virtual dates around. Or, you know what, if it's really not best and I really don't want to go to that event, I can easily say, well, I'm already booked on that date because I am. I've booked it for a specific event. So that time frame is taken up, which, sidebar, gives you some pretty great leverage as far as negotiation of fees, as far as making sure that you're getting everything taken care of that you need to, because the speaker that's booked has a totally different position in the negotiation than the speaker who isn't. The speaker who booked is not desperate. The speaker who isn't is desperate. And so take away desperation by filling up your own calendar and then getting out there and working it and filling it. And then number 4 is cash flow. It's another great gift today. We have the opportunity, and we're going to cover all 3 here in just a minute. We have the opportunity to get paid in several ways for the actual keynote, for things that we sell, and for ongoing coaching consulting. We decide that's going to be part of our package. In the old school days, speaking was really about getting up, stepping on the stage, getting your check, and leaving, and pretty much being done and searching for the next gig. But today, a gig can turn into multiple engagements. It can go from just speaking on stage to a follow-up, a 4, 5, 6, or even a monthly webinar that you hold for that company. It can turn into a consulting or a coaching contract with that company. So there's so many more elements today that really become such a great gift for us. All right, so we've covered a pretty good bit of content so far. What's been most helpful so far? I'm going to take a little drink of water real quick. Type into the Q&A box what has been the most helpful for you so far. All right, that I'm able to book my own events and it actually counts as events. That's a huge aspect. You're right. Most of the time we don't even think about that. It doesn't even seem like it's something we should do, but it actually is something we do. Somebody else is saying that it really kind of restructures my mind to think about myself really as a speaker. I do a lot of writing, but I haven't really thought of myself as a speaker before. Here's another one again, that I can fill up my calendar with my own event. That's a huge shift mentally that makes a big, big difference in realizing what you're going to do. Cash flow. I tend to not get paid at all, and I've really struggled with getting people to pay me when I speak. Do you have any ideas for this of how I can turn that around? Brad, a couple of things. First of all, make sure you always get your expenses paid for at minimum. Secondly, figure out ways to actually turn that into something profitable. Sometimes people will just say, we never pay any speakers, and that's it. What I usually leverage is I say that I want to get everybody's mailing address in the room, or I want to get an email sent out to everybody who attended and invite them to come and to join my email list. So that's a great way to get paid, because the real key is to build your own audience and not be subject to an audience that's out there somewhere. All right, good stuff, guys. Let's keep going. So lift, how do we do this? How do we actually build the $1 million keynote business? And if you've been to milliondollarkeynote.com, then you've seen this. It correlates with the article, and the article basically covered the top 3 sections. And we're going to work through this pretty rapidly. But $1 million keynote is about your message, confidence, content, and connection. It's about your marketing to attract, to automate in your apps. And it's about monetizing, paid products, and proximity. So let's work through those. So your message when it comes to $1 million keynote, your content, your confidence, and connection. Your content, as we mentioned earlier, is what you're going to share specifically with that audience. That's always built around a framework. And right before I came on the webinar today, I spent some time with a client where we really worked through some of the more advanced principles of him taking his content and making it real. Like we covered things like you can either take people to their backyard or you can take them to the moon, to really create that connection, that feel with people with the content so that they feel like they're right there with you or you're taking them somewhere brand new. But when it comes to the content, the real key is to say this about any message. Here's where the audience is and here's where the audience wants to be. How do I get them there? And that can be through a series of stories. It can be a series of points. It's really going to depend. When I do work with people on their keynote, it's not just a framework that says we're going to cover these steps. It's a framework that ends up being developed based on what they need. If I've got somebody that is in more of a field that is a field of logic and they're in CPA, their keynote looks totally different than somebody that's in, say, golf or network marketing or fitness. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take this message, we're going to take this content, and we're going to match it to our market instead of the old school way of saying, I've got a message that I'm going to force everybody to get and to understand. What I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to shape that. That's why it's important to understand your audience, to understand what's going on with them so that you can bring a message that's going to really resonate with them. And you're going to bring that content that's going to move them from where they are to where they want to be. Now, most of the time, we're going to be using points. Like when I'm out there sharing about the 5 stones, and I do that talk a lot with insurance companies. Well, I'm going to cover the milestone, the cornerstone, the stepping stones, the tombstones, and the firestones. So those are the 5 points. And those 5 elements are really easy for them to connect with and to remember. I always believe that our content should be very memorable and it should be very portable. For example, if I was doing this presentation live as a keynote, I would really center on people remembering message, market, and monetize. That's really the only things that I'd want them to walk away with. But they could. It'd be memorable. They would remember those 3 M's: message, market, monetize. And for it to be portable means they not only take it with them, but they're able to share it with somebody else. So somebody says, hey, I heard you heard Paul speak today. Well, what did he talk about? People might say, well, he talked about message, market, and monetize. Or they may say, yeah, I said it on his 5 stones. It was kind of interesting because he talked about the milestone, which is really the goal. He talked about the cornerstone, the pretty and the ugly, so that it's the reason why I'm doing this. He talked about stepping stones, how we get there. He talked about tombstones, things that are going to put us in the ground. And he talked about firestones, sensory items that reconnect us with our goal. They would remember most of that and be able to share that again. So with your content, you want to make sure that you're sharing it in a way that's memorable and that it's portable. Now, when you have that, that's when confidence comes. Most of the time when I talk to people who say they're scared of speaking, I ask them what they're speaking about. They usually don't know. But when they do know, they have confidence in that. If I was to have to get up and speak about accounting, I would be terrified. I'm terrible at it. But if somebody asked me to speak about golf or about leadership or about business or about fitness, I wouldn't mind at all. I talk about those things all the time with my friends, with family members, with colleagues. So it's easy to talk about things that we know about, that we're certain about. And so if you have your content structured correctly, you're going to have that confidence. And you might be saying, well, I'm still a little bit nervous because I'm not sure about my gestures. I don't like my voice. That's not the most important things. You can get to those over time. The most critical aspect is content. How many times have you heard speakers get up and say, I want you to know that I'm not a speaker and I'm real nervous today? You know what? Fine. But it's so much better to get up and say something along the lines of, let's say you're scared to death. Say, you know what? I want to be totally honest with you. I'm scared to death. I hate my voice and my gestures stink. But if you take notes and if you write down all the points that I give you today and you apply them, your life will be changed and you'll be better off. So excuse my voice, excuse my lack of gestures, and please concentrate on my content because it's really going to be good. That's totally different, right? I mean, that's confidence in the content. You don't necessarily have to have confidence in your ability or your skill level or your presentation set yet. Start out by being so confident with the content that you're not too concerned. I mean, you think about it. If a guy got up and said, I'm going to share with you, and let's say that his voice was like this. I'm going to share with you over the next 30 minutes exactly how in 14 steps that you can become a millionaire in the next 30 days. And if you don't become a millionaire in 30 days, following these steps, I will give you $2 million. Would you care about his cadence? Would you care about his rhythm? Would you care about his gestures? Would you care about his voice inflection? Would you care about his facial expressions? No, you wouldn't. You'd get your piece of paper out and you'd take those 14 things down and you'd set a timer for 30 days and you'd get after it. Why? Because of the content. So if your content is strong, you should have confidence in that. And then connection is the area that can really become strained because that's when we get more into the presentation skills. So let me give you some shortcuts if you're the type of person that is a little bit nervous or you're scared, you're not sure you're going to connect. But first of all, you got to have your content, you got to be solid with it. Be confident with it. And then your connection, remember just a couple of easy principles. Number one, everybody is very familiar with pain and with heartache and with loss. Very few people are familiar with wild successes. So if you're going to tell stories that don't make you look great. If I was to tell a story about running down the football field, trying to catch the guy to save the game-winning touchdown, and I lunged for him at the 10-yard line, and I face planted and came up with turf buried all up in my helmet, and the guy scores the winning touchdown, people feel bad, but they might laugh and they might go, "Oh, I get that. I've had losses before." But if I say, "You know what? And I caught that guy and I tackled him and I saved the game." Almost nobody's experienced that, right? By the way, that second part of the story was not true. I was the faceplant at the 10-yard line. So we connect with people through our weaknesses. That's number one. Number two, use things that are universal. For the most part, people have done things that are fun. They've been to the movies. They've been fishing. They've been to the beach, or they've seen snow, or they've seen it on television. These are universal experiences. And so if we use those in our examples, then people get that. If we say one day I was out at the park, people they've been to the park. All right. So there's connection. It's really easy. The real key is to make sure that we're always humble and we're never arrogant in our connection. So with your message, be super solid with your content, have it structured in a way that is very memorable and very portable. Have confidence in your content that even if you don't do your best job, if they take notes, it was worth them showing up. And then on the connection, make sure that everything you're sharing is really about humility from your standpoint, and it's going to end up making the audience the hero if they're able to carry that out. Here's a testimonial from Shauna as we work together on her keynote. Able to help her leverage her story, pull out a complete keynote from her. Before, she says, I was unclear about what to say, how to say it. Now I have a solid keynote with a killer open and close and content that fits me perfect. My audiences are thrilled with the result. What we did is we got on the phone probably for a little less than an hour, but I had her talk for about 30 minutes. And I wrote down during that 30 minutes the story that she told. I wrote down points that she made that she didn't realize she was making. So here's an exercise that I encourage you to do. Whether you use somebody like me or whether you use a friend, you sit down and you just talk. You talk it out, not to yourself. You talk it to somebody else. Say, take notes on the things that I cover. And she did not have a keynote planned at all. She didn't have a single point planned. When she got done, I said, okay, Shauna, here's what I heard. Here's your beginning. Here are your 5 points. And by that time, because the way my head works, I'd already put a lot of alliteration in it. Everything started with S and we worked straight through her deal. It was pretty silly. And then we went to her close. When she heard the content, when she heard the 5 points that she had really shared but had not structured, she immediately felt confident. See, before I was unclear about what to say and how to say it. That's the essence of being insecure and lacking confidence in speaking. Now I have a solid keynote. That's she didn't say suddenly she became a better presenter. Now I have a solid keynote. So you can feel that difference and that shift, right? So that's the key in getting that message together. Second is marketing. So here's an example from my speaking website for life insurance agents. Life insurance super agent is what I call this keynote. So there's 3 elements to your marketing. Now, some of you guys aren't even interested in this. You were just interested in that keynote portion, and that's fine. That's the message. But second is the marketing for those of you who want to build your business and build a speaking business, whether you're a coach, an author, or you label yourself a speaker. There's really 3 elements to attract, to automate, and then your apps. First of all, you want to attract people. As I mentioned earlier, I really believe, and you don't have to do this, but I really believe that model of setting up your own theater as opposed to always searching for a new theater is so much easier. You can still get the outside bookings, but when you attract people to you, when you attract them to your site, when they sign up for your material, when they show up for your webinars, when they buy tickets to your event, then you don't have to keep getting different audiences. You know, even as I look at the names of attendees today, I recognize a lot of names. Some of you guys have been with me for years. We've been together. We've worked together. We've talked on the phone. We've done different things. So when we look at this, it's a model that some of you will be very familiar with. And sometimes people get offended at this, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm a believer. I actually work at my church. I'm a worship leader at church. But I want you to think about what happens at a church, okay? People show up at the same location, sit in the same spot, listen to the same person, to a very similar message, and put money in an offering every single week. The preacher doesn't go, I'm going to try to find me a different church to speak in every single Sunday. They find one location to speak in, and I think this is important, to become responsible for that congregation. So you think about building your own audience, attracting your own audience, so that as you develop more keynotes or more trainings or more products, and you bring that to the same audience, and your audience just continues to grow, are you really worried about whether or not you left your house or not? Are you really worried about whether you had to travel across the country to speak or actually got to walk from your bedroom into your computer? Are you really concerned if you're making $10,000 for a keynote, if you leave your house but you're making $30,000 if you don't leave your house? Are you really upset about that? I don't think so. So if you attract people to you, if you build your own audience, if you have your own stadium, your own arena, then it's going to make it so much easier for you to stay booked because you book yourself. And as your audience grows, guess where your gigs come from? That's right, from your audience. From the people who have been attending your webinars, they invite you to their companies. They invite you to their organizations. They invite you to their associations. See how this works? Instead of you having to go out there and search for gigs, you create your own gigs, you invite your own audience. Your audience then goes out and actually represents you in the marketplace. It's pretty cool. Secondly, you want to automate it as much as possible. If you're constantly searching for gigs, it's a lot of legwork. I'm not going to lie about that. It's a lot of work to get out there and search for gigs, to put in your speaker's kit, to make sure that everybody knows everything about you and you get invited to speak. It's a lot of effort. Sometimes it's super worth it, and sometimes it's super exhausting. On the other hand, if you have somebody that comes to your site and they opt in for your newsletter or for your MP3 or for your giveaway, and then they get a sequence of follow-up email messages, not even to market to them, but simply to serve them and to help them and to invite them maybe to the next thing that you're doing so they can get a ticket for that event. All of that can happen automatically so that you're not constantly out there beating yourself to death. You can be out there sharing your message. This is the thing that speakers have always hated, is I hate that I have to spend all my time marketing when I really want to share my message. If you market correctly, you can spend most of your time sharing your message and allow your system to automatically invite your people. Like I'm running ads on Facebook right now. Even while we're on this webinar, there are people who have signed up. They've gotten on my email list. They've already received the first message. They're already getting information. They're already getting training, and they will be invited to the next event that I host, right? Some of those people will get me invited to their corporations, their organizations, their associations. So you want to automate that as much as possible. And then the way that we do that is through our apps. So you see on this page, a very simple speaker's website. I believe that we should have a site specific to our niches and be focused on that. Most of you had no clue that I spoke in the life insurance industry. I don't really talk about that a lot in my other markets, but this is where I do a majority of my speaking. So I've got a site that is designated just for that. If I send the life insurance folks to paulbevans.com, they'll get confused. They're like, well, what? This guy's like involved in a bunch of stuff. What's going on? Whereas if I have that dedicated speaker site that's super clean, super easy, works on the iPad, works on the phone, so that people can come and they can sign up and get my gear, then it works out really well. So one app is obviously your site. Another is your automated system using something like Aweber, Office Autopilot, One Shopping Cart, something along those lines, so that you can end up bringing that automation in. People can automatically sign up. They can automatically become part of your programs. And then your one sheet. Even though you may not have to have this printed today, like you did back in the day and mail out your one sheets, it's still really good to have on your speaker's website so that people can go and they can opt in. You got their name, their email address. You get to follow up with them, but they get the one sheet. So right there in the middle of the page where you see super agent and it looks like just a bunch of unreadable text right there, those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different workshops that I do. And then over there to the right is something that I host just for executives, life insurance executives. Overall, my keynote is called Super Agent. I don't have 1,000 keynotes for life insurance. I've got Super Agent. And then the agents that end up on my email list, they get to come to my webinars that dive into deeper elements of becoming a successful life insurance agent from the client perspective and from a business perspective. And then another app is just to make sure that you've got your structure in place and that you've got your other elements in place, such as a podcast, if you choose to do that. I don't think it's mandatory, but that can be another app for you, or even your speaker reel. My speaker reel doesn't even have any live action of me speaking in it. It's got my voice from a live engagement, and then it's got a lot of photos from live engagements. So your speaker reel does not even have to be live necessarily. So don't think it's that difficult to put together. That can easily be done for you by someone out there at like Elance or a place like that. You can get that done. So in your marketing, you want to attract, you want to automate, and you want to have your apps in place. At minimum, you want to have a speaker's website. You want to have an automated system of follow-up emails. And you also want to have a professionally designed one sheet that represents you well. All this should match so that people don't get confused and they don't get distracted. This is my best friend Kerry that most of you know, but she a while back said, "Listen, I've got to get dedicated on this. Will you help me out?" So I created for her a dedicated speaker site designed a one sheet for her. Actually, my team did her business cards as well. And so now she's excited. She's already been sending her site out and she's getting booked because she's got her marketing in place. She's not scared to send somebody to her website for her speaking. Sure, she can send them to her regular site for all of her content and a very broad spectrum. But when it comes to her speaking, she sends them directly to her speaking site and allows them to enter into the funnel from that. And then number 3 is to monetize your speaking. So you see a couple of my products here. One is called Paid, how to launch as a high paid speaker. And here's 5 stones that I mentioned earlier that not only do I go out and do that as a keynote, it's an actual product. So as you think about monetizing your speaking business, think first of all about getting paid. And that's usually your fee. I would say as a beginning speaker, at the very minimum, don't leave the house for less than $500. If you're going to trade out an email list or a mailing list, that's totally different. But if somebody says we're going to write you a check, then try to get at least $500 for that. Nobody's surprised by that or shocked. I'll tell you that right now, the most popular amount to get paid as a keynote at an average sized event is $2,500. It's super popular right now, and people don't really blink at that too much. I'm not saying it's always easy to get, but it's not crazy. Whereas when you come out with $10,000 right out of the gate, sometimes people are shocked by that. The real key is to understand your industry and to understand what the budget is within that industry. And so when you learn that, it gives you a lot more leverage. For example, with life insurance, there's a lot of local meetings, but it comes out of the local budget, and often it comes out of the managing partner's pocket. So it's harder to get paid for that, right? At the regional level, they've got organizations that handle those events, and they do have budgets. At the national level, they've got what's called a big budget. You see how technical I am? And then at the international level, it's just outrageous. And you can just about name your own fee. And generally at the international level, you have to be that celebrity level to really get the big keynote. But even somebody like myself that is at the non-celebrity level and has a story that is extremely popular and extremely useful for people makes a big difference. Here's a great question that came in from Yvonne. How many keynote speaking websites do you have? And if you have several websites, do you have several people sign into different newsletters? And do they all receive different type of content depending on the sign-up source? Great question. I've got 3 different speaker sites for 3 different markets, Yvonne, and they do all receive different content. What I tend to do is use a series of 5 follow-up messages that are very specific to that industry. They're not long. It doesn't take me long to write them. If I do a follow-up newsletter, I do more of a quarterly update with them, because what I'm working on doing is getting people into the proximity, and I spend most of my time giving the attention to the people who are kind of in the inner circle, if that makes sense. Now, they also receive emails that are live anytime that I do a webinar. So, and that depends on the industry. So if it's in my business industry, they're going to receive something just about every week from me because I've usually got something going on. If it's in insurance, they're going to receive something from me about once a month for some new topic that I'm covering, some new webinar that I have. So super great question. And I tend to use that one-page keynote website just about for everything. So that tends to be my overall deal. It doesn't take long for me to set up at all, or I have my team do that, or I can have my team do that for you guys if you guys are interested in that. So paid is about your keynote fees. Then secondly is your products. You know, what you actually put out there and you actually sell. Now, in this overall picture of the $1 Million Keynote, what I like is kind of the Dave Ramsey model. You think about Dave Ramsey and he's got his 6 baby steps, right? So you go to his radio show, you can hear those just about every radio show. You buy his book, guess what's in that book? 6 baby steps. You buy his workbook, what's in there? 6 steps. You buy his seminar and you go to his seminar, what's in it? 6 steps. You go to his keynote, what's in his keynote? It's all his keynote filters down all of these elements. That's the exact same content. There's just different levels of application with it. So if I go in and do my 5 stones keynote, I could do that in 20 minutes if I needed to, 30 minutes if I needed to. But if people want the course, it's going to take them through an hour of training, right? So it's going to be a little bit more detailed. So the product is kind of that second tier level. There's get paid for your keynote. And then your product is really based on your keynote. So even with these 5 stones, I could make a product just out of the milestones, how to set your goal, how to make sure that the goal that you're chasing is the right goal. I could make a product out of Cornerstone. I could easily do an hour or 2-hour training just on Cornerstone and have worksheets and formulas to make sure that you got the best Cornerstone. Stepping stones could be like a 3-hour workshop. How do you create your plan, right? How do you take somebody else's plan and make it your own? Tombstones, probably about an hour, maybe 90 minutes, some real detailed work of what could kill you. And then Firestones could be another 2 or 3 hours, especially if you got other people sharing the content, right? So that's all within the product. Yes, they could hear it live in the keynote, but the product allows them to take it deeper. And then finally is proximity. Proximity is how close they really get to you. I mean, you're the speaker and you're the one with the message. You're the one with the IP or the intellectual property. How close can they get to you with it? Okay, so I'm teaching about communication, teaching about $1 Million Keynote. And I could say, hey, guess what? In fact, I'll do this in a minute. You can go and sign up for a list when I actually put out the $1 Million Keynote course. If you want to come and be part of that live, then you could sign up for that and get notified by that. And that'd take it a little bit deeper, right? That'd be more of a product. But some people may say, Paul, I think that's great, but I want you to do with me what you did with Shauna, and I want you to pull that keynote out of me. I want us to build a keynote from scratch. I don't want to go and study a course and try to figure it out myself. I want you to help me. Well, that's one-on-one, and that's proximity, right? So even in your speaking, everybody may not do this, but it's a great way to build extra income is that you have that proximity factor. So that the closer people get to be to you to hear what you have to share and what you have to teach, and to have it applied specifically to their situation, the more you should charge, right? So if somebody buys a book and never meets you in person, never talks to you, never comes to a webinar, it's probably going to be pretty inexpensive, right? The proximity is very distant. If somebody says, hey, I want an hour of your time one-on-one, proximity is very close. It's going to be pretty expensive, right? So that's the way that works and the way that framework works. So we covered message, which is about content and confidence and connection. We covered marketing, which was about, hopefully you remember, anyone, Bueller, it's about attracting, about automating, and about apps. And number 3 is monetize. It's about paid products and proximity, right? So that's the overall framework of $1 Million Keynote and the structure of it. Really makes a big difference, really allows you to ramp up your business. Worked recently with Jerry Clark, and he said, Paul mentored me through the creation and packaging of my intellectual property. He helped me create my signature product, and he showed me how to upgrade my programs. I will easily double my income this year. I mean, that was just a blast to be able to do that. But he's a speaker, but he's not just monetizing through fees. He's also monetizing through his products and through his proximity. All right. So if you have any questions, type those in. I'm going to go through the next steps if anybody wants to go any further. Let's see where that comes up. If you want something, that's self-led, then, and I didn't even mean for that to pop in. That was just some later magic. Go to milliondollarkeynote.com/notify so that when I actually do live training on $1 Million Keynote, if you want to go through the creating of your keynote, that I'll take you through my keynote creation process where we determine what your story is, we determine what points you're going to make, how you're going to prove those points, and you end up with an overall structure. Then go to milliondollarkeynote.com/notify. You can't buy anything. So don't get nervous. People start freaking out. They're like, I showed up on a webinar I got sold to. All I'm saying is go and sign up to be notified. No reason to be nervous. If you want to work one-on-one to create your keynote like Shauna and I did, then email me at paul@paulbevans.com and say like, help with my keynote in the subject line, help with my keynote in the subject line. And that way I'll know that it came from this webinar. So Paul at paulbevans.com, and just say, hey, Paul, I'd love to work one-on-one with you to create my own personal keynote. So just send that to me. That's option one. And that's really for those of you who are not worried about the business side. You're not trying to create your own business. You're not worried about a speaker's website. You're already speaking some, or you're doing some webinars, and you just want keynote creation. Secondly is the $1 Million Keynote Velocity Call. It's only 10 to 15 minutes, and it's free. But it's to determine and to get you clear about what's possible for you. Impact, income, and independence. The way that you really need to shape your business. We're going to discover the number one thing that's stopping you from getting what you want in your speaker's business. We're going to develop an action plan that spots the gaps in your $1 Million Keynote and where to move to action. You know, you may feel like that your issue is that you don't even have a good keynote, and what you need is a great website. But I'll look at it and go, well, you know what? Your website's fine. The problem is it's actually your keynote's weak. You know, we got to change that. Right? So we'll spend time, and very quick, you're going to have all this lined up before we get together on the phone. And if you don't have websites, if you don't have Keynote, that's all fine. It's really just a discovery call to see where we need to go. A customized plan for your new leverage business. What I'll do is make some recommendations. And I'll say, you know, from everything that we talked about, here's what I recommend that you ought to do. Here's the next step that you need to take. You know, go and get busy. You're going to leave excited, confident, and reassured about what you need to do. That says reinsured. That's some of my insurance language speak. To elevate your business fast so that you can see what you need to do best and where you need to move from here. So the purpose of the call is basically to discover what gaps you have, and then determine if I can help you or if I need to recommend a product or a person to you. And so it's only 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. And you can go and sign up at milliondollarkeynote.com/session. And when you get there, you'll fill out a little form, and it's going to transfer you to my Time Driver account, and you'll actually go in and book in a 15-minute slot at that time. So we'll do that velocity call. Again, that's free. It's just determine where you are, where you want to go from here. All right, so any questions that you guys have about today? One more time over on this other page. If you want self-led keynote creation, go to milliondollarkeynote.com/notify or email me at paul@paulbevans.com. And then if you want to get on a velocity call, then go to milliondollarkeynote.com/session. All right, let's see here. I need help with creating my website and speaker one sheet. Did you mention you have a team to create one? Absolutely, I sure can. And what I do with that, Yvonne, is that if you'll email me at paul@paulbevans.com, we can figure out what you've already got in place and what you need to get in place first, and then I can give you a quote on that, and we can get that knocked out really fast for you if you're interested. So go to paul@paulbevans.com, email me there. That'd be awesome. Any questions about anything covered today, guys? Again, if you want to sign up for $1 Million Keynote when that's actually going to be taught live for the purpose of creating your keynote, go to milliondollarkeynote.com/notify. If you want to work one-on-one, email me at paul@paulbevans.com. And if you want to book in a velocity call to help you with your overall speaker business, spot the gaps, see what steps you need to take next, go to milliondollarkeynote.com/session. All right, I don't see any questions coming in. Hopefully, I gave you a great framework today, gave you a great overview, gave you some things to think about. I know a lot of you are super excited about booking your own events and doing that. And you're welcome to ask any questions about what tools you use. Like right now, what I'm using is GoToWebinar, and that works out really well for me. And I love hosting my online events with it. And if you've got questions about booking devices or anything like that, feel free to email me. And I'm going to be publishing some follow-up materials over at facebook.com/$1 Million Keynote. Make sure you go over there and you like that page so you can receive updates. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming out today. I'm going to get the replay edited and up and out, and I'll email that to you. You can go back through and take some more notes if you need to. Hey, as always, success is not an accident. Be blessed.